So this is Biology Paper 2, 2025. So in this video, I'm going to guide you on how to write an essay. So remember, this is section B, and it carries 36 marks. So you have to answer 3 questions from these 5 questions. So make sure you choose the questions that you are capable of answering. And the questions that you're sure of that you can get at least 8 marks from 12, or 10 marks, or 12 out of 12. Alright, so we have question 1, which is saying, explain the meaning of the term homeostasis. So if you know what the term homeostasis is, at least read also question B, so that you know if you can go for question 1. So it is saying, describe the mechanism of thermoregulation by the skin. So if you know that you can't answer B, but you're able to answer A, don't choose question 1. Why choosing it? Because you're going to get 3 marks and then lose 9 marks. Don't worry, we are going to answer them. Question 2, explain the structure and functional. So here you have to explain the structure as well as the functional difference between the red blood cells and white blood cells. It's carrying 4 marks. So if you're able to answer this one, well and good. Name the sites where blood cells are produced, 3 marks. Okay. So even that one, if you're able to answer it, well and good. Then for this one, describe the events which occur when a patient starts bleeding from a cut up to the time bleeding stops, 5 marks. So if you're able to answer this one here as well as this one, you're getting 7 marks. Then at least here, try to write something. Then you can get 8 or 9 or 10 marks from 12. So, what I can say about the essay part is that for question 5, or let me just specify ecology or ecosystem doesn't miss in an exam. So you have to know that this one is going to come always. So you need to know different questions, or the way they ask different questions under ecology or ecosystem. Then apart from that one, also the question from the production, this one here doesn't miss. So it can come either under plants or it can come under animals. So you have to take note of that. So I'm going to answer these ones that are examinable, as well as pick one of these. So it's either I'm going to pick this one here or this one here, or I can just answer 1, 2, then question 3, as well as question 5. This one here, it comes, but mostly it comes on section A. But it is also very simple. I'm going to answer it in a separate video. Then I'm going to show you how to go about it. So let's start with question 1. Since the question is asking us to explain the term homeostasis and it is carrying 3 marks, so what should you include in your definition? You have to include number 1, the key terms that are found in the definition of homeostasis, as well as the mechanism, how this one is maintained. And then also you can also include an example. So what I'm trying to say is you have to define homeostasis by saying it is the constant maintenance of the internal environment. So now I've defined what homeostasis is as the constant maintenance of the internal environment. What it means here is this. Let's say, for example, if you are in a cold area, your body is going to make sure that it maintains the same body temperature inside you, thereby activating some mechanisms which are going to increase the body temperature, or which are going to maintain the body temperature. That's the reason why we are saying it's a constant maintenance of the internal environment. Now, those mechanisms of maintaining the internal environment can be maintained by one. It can be the negative feedback mechanism. Okay, negative feedback mechanism, as well as positive feedback mechanism, and positive feedback mechanism. Those are the 2 ways in which homeostasis can be maintained: positive feedback mechanism and negative feedback mechanism. Then from there, now you can also give an example of homeostasis. So for example, when the temperature is too low, the body is going to do what, or the skin is going to constrict in order to prevent the loss of what? The loss of heat. Then from there, we are going to get your 3 marks, as simple as that. So how do you write? Let's go to this page. So I was saying that number 1, you say homeostasis. So homeostasis, like I said, is the what? The constant maintenance of the internal environment. The constant maintenance of the internal environment. So this one is E. Maintenance of the internal environment. Internal environment. So as you are writing, you have to make sure that you write your essay in paragraph form. So we are done by defining what homeostasis is to say. It is the constant maintenance of the internal environment. Then from there, like I said, it can be maintained by two mechanisms, that is negative feedback and positive feedback mechanisms. So you have to know all those things I'm going to explain. So like I said, it is maintained by both negative feedback mechanism. So I'm just going to say negative feedback as well as positive feedback, and positive feedback mechanism. So here we're not done. At least you give one example to show that you know, because that one is 3 marks. For example, when it is code, the skin constrictor, in order to prevent the loss of heat, the skin constrict in order to prevent loss of heat. So we are done for the first part, which is question A. So this is how you're supposed to write that one. Now let's come to question B. What this question B is asking us, it is asking us to describe the mechanism of thermoregulation by the skin. Remember, this term here, it can be divided into two, where it can be divided into thermo, which is this part here, and regulation, which is the other part. So thermo means heat, and regulation means how you can keep this body temperature at a constant rate. Okay, so now this one here, they have directed that as to say how the skin can regulate the thermoregulation. So you have to explain 2 ways in which the skin can maintain thermoregulation. One, it can be in a cold state. Okay, it can be in the cold state, as well as it can be in the hot state. There are only 2 states here that you have to explain. So one state is going to carry, let's say it's going to carry 4.5. Another one is going to carry 4.5 marks. So you have to divide it wisely. Make sure that you balance up the points. So before we start writing, let's gather some points that we are going to include under cold state. So when it is cold, what is going to happen to the skin and what is going to happen to the structures of the skin? Number one, you know to say that the skin is made up of the elector muscles. Okay, it's made up of elector muscles which attaches themselves to the follicle air. So we have the elector muscles that attaches to the what? To the elector follicle. Then apart from the elector muscles, we also have the blood vessels. We also have the nerve cells, which can be the nerve ending, which senses the change in temperature. So we have the nerve ending. Apart from the nerve ending, so this one is just going to cater for all these, but the mechanism is going to be different. So the nerve ending. We also have the sweat gland. What is going to happen to the sweat gland? Okay, sweat gland. Apart from the sweat gland, what else can we put here? Blood vessels. So I think these, they are enough. But I'm not saying that you just could dilate by saying the mechanism of thermoregulation can be maintained by elector muscles, nerve ending, or nerve cells, sweat gland, and blood vessels. No. So these are the points that are going to help us now to come up with the points that we need to write. So let me start with the cold state. What happens when there is cold state? One thing that you need to understand here is that the center which is involved in maintaining the homeostasis is the hypothalamus. I forgot to put this one here. This is an important point that you need to understand, because the hypothalamus is the one that activates different mechanisms, that is the negative feedback as well as the positive feedback, depending on how the body want to maintain the internal environment. So when you are in a cold state, when it is cold, what is going to happen to the skin? Number one, you find that the skin is going to constrict. What it means to constrict is that it is going to come together, like compressing itself, but it's not that compressing. I'm just giving as an example, coming together. Okay, that is it's more like vasoconstriction. There will be vasoconstriction or constriction of the skin. Then when you talk of vasoconstriction, now this one is going to deal with the blood vessels. So when the skin contract or constrict, what is going to happen to the blood vessels? The blood vessels, they are also going to undergo what we call vasoconstriction. Meaning to say, this vasoconstriction, usually, let's just imagine that this is the skin. Okay, if this is the skin, when it is hot, you are able to see the blood vessels on the surface of the skin, because they move near the skin surface in order to to release heat to the environment or to allow loss of heat. But when it is cold, you find that you can't see the blood vessels. Why? Because there is vasoconstriction of these blood vessels. So you need to take note of that. And then apart from that one, like I said, there is hair follicle here, the hair follicles. Okay, so these hair follicles, we have the elector muscles which attaches to the hair follicles. So what these elector muscles does is this: when it is cold, you find that these elector muscles, they are going to do what? They are going to relax. Okay. Then when it is hot, they are going to contract. Once they contract, they are going to pull this hair follicle to stand up. So you find that when it is cold, the hair follicles fall down here because the elector muscles relaxes. Okay. Then what about the nerve endings? So these nerve endings, they are used for sensing the temperature change between the internal environment and the outside world. So you can start right, because this one is just applicable for both the hot part as well as the hot part. So what happens also to the sweat glands? So when it is cold, the sweat glands, they are not going to produce sweat. Imagine you are losing heat, a lot of heat during cold. What is going to happen to your body? Your body is going to be affected by hypothermia. It's going to have hypothermia. Okay. Then when your body is not losing heat during the hot state, your body is going to have hyperthermia, having a lot of heat energy, which is also bad. So how do you write that one? Remember, we're describing thermoregulation by the skin. So this one was our question A. Then our question B, let me just write it here. This question B. So I'm going to say the thermoregulation can be regulated by the skin in the following ways, or in the following state. So we are saying the thermoregulation can be regulated by the skin, can be regulated by the skin in the following ways. By the skin in the following state, not in the following, or in the following way, or in the following state. Then these are, we can talk of the cold state, and the hot state. Then from there now you start explaining under the cold state. So you're going to say, when it is cold, what happened to the skin? The first thing is that the nerve ending, they are going to sense the change in temperature and send the impulse to the what? To the hypothalamus, because the hypothalamus is the master gland, or the master center for controlling the change in temperature. Okay, so we are saying when the temperature is low, when the temperature is low, okay, the nerve ending, so we are talking about the nerve ending now. The nerve ending will send the impulse to the brain. So the nerve ending will send the impulse to the brain, specifically to the hypothalamus. They will send the electrical impulse, or the impulse, to the what? To the brain. Then after sending the impulse to the brain is going to process the information to say, oh, there is a change in temperature. Then after that, what is going to happen? Remember, this is the negative feedback mechanism, isn't it? When there is change in something, the body is going to make sure that it does what it can in order to maintain the same so from there you find that the blood vessels, they are going to constrict. So we are going to say the blood vessels undergo vasoconstriction. So we are talking about the blood vessels now. The blood vessels will, or let me talk about the skin before I talk about the blood vessels. So the skin will constrict. The skin will constrict, and blood vessels will undergo vasoconstriction, isn't it? And the blood vessels will undergo vasoconstriction. So what it means to say vasoconstriction, meaning to say They won't appear on the surface of the skin. They'll go down or beneath the skin, so that there is no loss of it, since it is cold, isn't it? So the blood vessels are going to undergo vasoconstriction. So apart from the skin constricting and the blood vessels undergoing vasoconstriction, we also have the elector muscles. What is going to happen to the elector muscles as well as the air follicles? So we are going to say the elector muscles relaxes. And then once they relax, you find that the air follicles, they are going to fall down instead of them standing up, because the elector muscles is relaxed, because the elector muscles are the ones that enables these air follicles to stand. So we are saying the elector muscles relax or relaxes, and the air follicle falls. The air follicle falls. So apart from that one thing that you need to understand here is that the mechanism of shivering is also going to be initiated by the hypothalamus. Why shivering there? So this is to allow now heat production from the adipose tissues. So adipose tissues, they are able to generate heat energy during the cold state. So you're going to say the brain activate shivering. So the brain activate shivering and activate shivering and enables the adipose tissues to produce energy or heat energy, and enables adipose tissue cells, adipose tissue to produce heat energy. And then from there, now we are done for the cold state. So about the hot state is just the opposite of the cold state. So what we are from writing here is just going to be now the opposite. So of course the information is going to be sent. It's going to come from the nerve ending, which are near the surface of the skin. Then they are going to send the information to the hypothalamus, which is also going to initiate. Instead of vasoconstriction, it is going to initiate vasodilation of the blood vessels. As a result, you find that the blood vessels are going to move on the surface of the skin. So that's the reason why when it is hot, you are able to see your blood vessels, in order to allow the loss of heat. Because if there is no loss of heat, you find that the person is going to be affected by hypothermia. Let me say not hypothermia, but hyperthermia, high temperature. Then apart from that one, what is going to happen to the sweat gland is that during cold season, the sweat glands, they're not going to produce sweat, but they are going to be effective during the hot state, where they are going to produce sweat. Okay, they are going to release sweat. And then apart from that one, what else can I include also here? I've talked about the blood vessels. So the skin is going to dilate. It's going to dilate. The elector muscles, they are going to contract in order to pull the air follicle. So it is going to stand in order to allow the loss of heat. So that is what you're supposed to answer on this part. And then for question 2, it is asking us to explain the structure and functional differences between the red blood cell and the white blood cell. So remember, we are looking at the structure. We are also looking at the function. So this is 2 marks. Or let me say this is 4 marks. 2 marks for the structure part and 2 marks for the functional part. So in terms of the structure, if I draw the structure of a red blood cell here, it's going to look something like this. Okay, so this is the red blood cell. Then let me just draw a white blood cell. Let me choose the monocyte. Let me also include the phagocyte here so that you see now the differences. So the phagocyte is the one which has now this lobed nucleus, and then this one is the monocyte. So in terms of the structure, you can talk of the red blood cell being biconcave in shape. Okay, biconcave in shape. So I'm talking about the red blood cell here now. Apart from being biconcave in shape, you have to talk about this red blood cell lacking the nucleus. It doesn't have the nucleus. So no nucleus. And I think this one is enough for us to differentiate the white blood cell from the red blood cell. So it's biconcave in shape, it doesn't have the nucleus. What about the white blood cells? So for the white blood cells, one, they have the nucleus, and this nucleus can be lobed nucleus or it can be large depending on the type of the white blood cell that you're talking about. So it has a nucleus or a big nucleus. It has a big nucleus. So when I say it has a big nucleus, I'm talking about now the monocyte. I'm focusing on this one here. Then apart from that one, this one is not biconcave in shape. Okay? So the shape of this one here, especially the phagocyte, they don't have the definite shape. Because they are falling under the macrophages, and the macrophages, they can take up any shape depending on the phagocyte, that the pathogen that they are digesting. So no definite shape for this one. So not definite shape. So I think we have talked about we have talked about the structure part. So we write this one here as well as this one. What about the function? So in terms of the function, you notice that the red blood cell transport oxygen and carbon dioxide in small amount. But to be specific, they transport oxygen from the lungs to the tissues, then transport carbon dioxide from the tissues to the lungs. Okay, so transport carbon dioxide from cells. Then when it comes to the white blood cells, white blood cells, they are going to involve themselves in immunity. So those are the functional differences. Immunity or immune defense in general, we can say. So apart from that one, I can also include this one here, producing the antitoxins, which is also part of immunity. They also produce plasma, especially the lymphocyte. So produce plasma. So these are the functional difference, because the red blood cells, they don't produce plasma. So how do you write now? So we're just going to say the following are the structural difference as well as the functional difference of the red blood cells. Then you start now differentiating. The red blood cell transport oxygen from the lungs to the tissues and transporting carbon dioxide from the tissues to the lungs, while white blood cells, they are involved in immunity or immune defense as well as producing plasma. That is for the function. Then in terms of the structure part, of course, you're supposed to start with the structure part. Then for the structure part, you're supposed to say the red blood cell and the white blood cell can be different in structure, form, in the following ways. Number one, you say, but you're not supposed to write it in point form. So let me just write that one. Okay, before I write that one, let me also talk about this one here, since I've gathered the points which I'm going to use to write in my essay. So name the sites where blood cells are produced. So the sites where blood cells are produced, number one, they are produced in bone marrows of the long bones. So the bone marrows of the long bone. So these bone marrows, they can be the red bone marrow, or the yellow bone marrow. But when you talk about the red bone marrow, focuses on the red blood cells. Apart from that one, it can be also produced by the yolk sac. So when I talk of the yolk sac, meaning I'm referring now to an embryo or the fetus before it is born, because the fetus doesn't have the matured bones. So the source of blood is going to come from the yolk sac. Apart from the yolk sac, it is also going to come from the liver. So the liver also produces blood cells during childhood. Not childhood, I can say childhood, but specifically during the embryo part. Then apart from that one, we also have the spleen. So in adult, mostly it is for the bone marrow. Then sometimes the liver can perform the extramedullary function, that is producing also the red blood cells. So we have the bone marrow, which is the red bone marrow, as well as the yellow bone marrow. Also have the yolk sac, the liver, and the spleen. So you have to group them. This is for the adult, and this one here is for the embryo part. Then the last one, now describe the events which occur when a person starts bleeding from a cut up to the time the bleeding stops. So this one here mostly it is focusing on the platelets. Platelets, okay, the function of the platelets as well as the clotting factors like factor 9, factor 8, calcium, also factor 1, prothrombin, thrombin, changing into thrombin. So those things we have to explain. So let's start. We are talking about the structure and the functional difference of the red blood cells. So we are going to say, so this is question A, question 2A. So we're just going to say the following, just need to be brief. The following are the structure, and functional differences, and functional differences, the functional differences of RBC, but of course you have to write it in full, and WBC, which is red blood cell and white blood cell. So number one, you have to say the red blood cell has the biconcave shape. It doesn't have the nucleus. It does not have the nucleus. While the white blood cells, one, if we talk of the phagocyte, like I said, it has a lobed nucleus, or it has a large nucleus, I can say. While the white blood cells has the big nucleus, or we can say lobed nucleus for the phagocyte, and doesn't have the definite shape, and does not have the definite shape. So we are done with the structural part. Now what about the functional part? So we're going to say the red blood cell is the one that transports oxygen, from the lungs to the tissues, then carbon dioxide from the tissues to the lungs, like that. So the red blood cell, you just have to be brief like the way I'm writing, just simple like that. No need of you complicating things here. So the red blood cell transport oxygen from the lungs to the cells or the tissues, of the body, and transport carbon dioxide. Let me just write CO2, but you have to write it in form. And transport carbon dioxide from the cells to the lungs. Alright, so from there now you have to say whereas the white blood cell, which is WBC, but you have to write it in full, is involved in immunity. And production of plasma. So we are done for the first part. This is how you're supposed to answer. Then for the second part, it was asking us to describe the state, or describing the state, the site. Site means the place, the site where the blood cells are produced. So we're just going to say the site of blood cell production, depend on whether the organism is a fetus or an adult. So let me just lab this one and then write it nicely. The site of blood cell production, blood cells production depend on whether this is A. Let me just write this one here. So the site of blood cells production depend on whether the organism is a fetus or an adult. Let me do this. Or an adult. So for adult, or let me just say for fetus, let me start with the fetus. For fetus, blood cells are produced from from the yolk sac. Apart from the yolk sac, spleen. Apart from the spleen, we can also talk of the liver. Yes, so these are the sites. So let me just say and the liver. And the liver. So these are the sites. For adults, they are produced from bone marrows of the long bones or flat bones. So they are produced from the bone marrow. So these bone marrows, like I said, it can be the yellow bone marrow or the red bone marrow. So from the bone marrows of the long bones, or flat bones. So we're done with the site. Then for number 3, or let me say question C, it was asking us to explain the mechanism that happens when a person has a cut up to the point where the wound healed, isn't it? So when a person has a cut, let me just go back. What happens? So when a person has a cut, you find that the collagen is going to be exposed to the platelets. So platelets, they stick to the collagen. Okay? So after the platelets stick to the collagen, you have to know that there is a formation of a plate plug. So the plate plug is formed by the platelets, as well as the contribution from the clotting factors like clotting factor 9, clotting factor 1, that is the conversion of prothrombin into thrombin. Okay? Then the use of calcium. And then I think this one here, you make it very simple or very easy. Just have to draw it in a flowchart. Or you come up with a mechanism that is going to describe how this one is going to lead to wound healing. So let me just do this.